Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Scorpio, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of August 2025. I hope you are well. I'm using the Llewellyn Tarot for you here today. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended at the end. That's in the description box below. You're looking for the link that takes you to Selfie. Alternatively, you can come over to Circle, join us over there. There you can get access to all of the extended content for all of the signs for no extra cost beyond the membership fee. So that's all 12 zodiac signs plus weekly energy readings plus random other videos that I just make as and when. You can hang out with an extraordinary group of people who are all very much experts in their own right. I love hanging out with them. I always learn a lot. And you can participate in the live classes that we run over there. So if that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with those links below. Let's flip around, Scorpio, because I'm sensing there is a really quite significant vibe shift, I feel, for August. And it isn't necessarily reflected in what's going on outside of us, although it might be. I feel like it's a new way that we are all approaching just the business of being us and what we're about and all that kind of thing, right? Obviously, we've had a bit of time with Mars being in Virgo. That feels like a blessed relief. You know, I'm a Leo and I'm fucking done with I was done with Mars being in Leo. But Saturn and Neptune are also in retrograde as well. So it's time for some reassessment. And I do think that this vibe shift feels much crisper than anything that we've experienced for the whole of this year, which is more welcome stuff. So, Scorpio, let's have a look and see what's going on with you. What does Scorpio need to know, please? Let's have 3 cards. Right, there's the first one. We've got the Strength card out straight away. Just got through talking about Leo there. What about current energy for Scorpio, please? We've got the 9 of Wands, Sagittarius energy, and what's coming towards Scorpio for August, please? More fire, King of Wands. Interesting. Oh, even here on the clarifying deck, we've got Leo sitting at the bottom there. It's all fire for you, Scorpio. It is all fire for you because we have the 3 of Wands sitting at the bottom of the deck. Now, let me just turn your coin around there so I'm looking at your pretty phoenix self. I feel like this is representing a movement out of your head, or maybe out of your emotions, I'm not sure, but certainly it's translating into action this month. We've seen the shift starting to happen, and I'll get into that in a moment, but we're seeing some very direct movement from Scorpio this month. The ones for me are very much about activity and doing things. We always talk about ones in terms of doing things, but it is also about experiences as well. And I feel like you pushing absolutely at the edges of your comfort zone's not really the right word, but it's something kind of adjacent to that. Experience, pushing at the edges of your experience and going, I'm ready for more, I'm ready to do more, I'm ready to experience more, and I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to think about it, I'm not going to feel my way through it because I don't need to. I know exactly what I'm doing and I know exactly how to do it, and everything is going to move in that direction because I will it to be so, right? When you've got this much fire on the table, will is always going to be showing up somewhere. So let me give these hello, Scorpio. You always show up in your own readings somewhere. I love that about Scorpio. Let's give these a good shuffle. Why is the Strength card on its side here, please, for Scorpio? Knight of Pentacles and the Star. Okay, well, I'm gonna honour the fact that it's not quite sure which way it's coming out, because I feel like that's got something to say in and of itself. What about current energy for Scorpio, please? Ooh, we have the 2 of Swords and we have the Empress. Tell me about the King of Wands, please. Why is that here for Scorpio? 9 of Pentacles and the Hanged Man. This is very interesting because even just this vibe shift that I'm talking about, it's accompanied with a shift that's happening inside you as well. And you may not have quite all the details of it, but the shift that we see from here to here, which is going to encompass a period of probably about 6 weeks, is significant. And so many things are changing during this period for you that, you know, what starts off as fairly indecisive and feeling a little bit lost with things, by the end of it is something entirely fucking different, right? Let me have a little swig of coffee. I do love my coffee. So the Queen of Swords is helping you sort things out. She's helping you work out what you think about things, make sense of stuff. And I do think that that's probably going to be something that we're going to see across all of the signs over the course of August in some way or another. Because you don't have the last 2 months of significant consciousness shift. I mean, I cannot tell you how incredible it is to watch this happening in real time for people. It's really quite astounding. Without there being some corresponding shift that happens in the external world. Now, when I'm talking about external world, I'm not talking about what's happening on the global stage. I'm not talking about what's happening between countries, or you know, rival factions of anything. I'm talking about like what you can see, hear, feel, touch, smell in your immediate environment, and how engaged you are with it, looking at it from an entirely different perspective and with a new set of eyes. And there's something incredibly motivating about this for you. So we come here. This is the recent past. When I'm talking about recent past, could be this morning. Right? Could be as recently as this morning, or it could be any time from about, I don't know, 6 weeks back from here, possibly. Certainly, we're kind of encompassing a lot of the energy of July into here now, and this is how we've felt. Right? It's the Strength card on its side. Now, obviously, this is not the best place for a Strength card to be. We would like that to be in the upright, because then we know we're being brave, we're being courageous, we're growing, we're doing all of these things. But I feel like there's been a little bit of a fog around where the growth actually has been for you. One of the really incredible things about watching all of this happen, in this position of witness, as I seem to be able to occupy here, not just reading for your sign, obviously, but reading right across all of the signs and seeing how this shift is manifesting in slightly different ways for all of them, is that it gives me a bit more of a bird's eye view, I guess. Now, the details belong to you, and they will be different for each of you, right? Hopefully the point of resonance is there. And so I may lack the detail, but what I can see that's happening over the top, I think, is something that you probably haven't been able to see. Because this idea that you've been just sort of chopping wood and carrying water and trying to be, you know, trying to be very clean about what you value, and very clean about where your attention goes, and very clean about where you're investing your time and all that sort of thing. But without any sense of when this is coming to any kind of conceivable end whatsoever, even if there have been kind of, you know, good bits in all of that time, it's like, when are we there? When are we out of the liminal space? When are we in a point where we can actually look and see how we've changed and recognized what's been going on? Because it feels to me that until we stop moving through the liminal space, we stop chopping wood and carrying water and working out what is valuable to us and all that kind of thing, it's very difficult to take all the information that we then have at our disposal, which is all of the things that are just laid out there, and work out where we would like to go next. Because where you thought you were going a little while ago, Scorpio, I don't think it means the same to you as it did before, right? Even if you're headed more or less in the same direction, there has been a refining process that's gone on. And I think, you know, when we talk about, you know, undertaking some sort of big journey, when you're plopped in the middle of the mountains somewhere with a compass, right? You've got a compass, you've got a map, but your compass is ever so slightly off. It's off by 1/4 of a degree, right? It looks more or less right. according to the sun. You're like, okay, everything's working here. That we need to plot this course. We need to go this way. What starts off as a quarter of a degree difference at your point of initiation, by the time you get 10 miles down the road, you're actually quite a way away from where you thought you were. Now, I don't think that this equates to some sort of being metaphorically lost, but I feel like you've been metaphorically lost. And the reality is, like, this little quarter of a degree off that your compass has been, it's felt a little bit like the universe or God, source, creator, you, whatever, kind of guiding you closer to where you needed to be rather than where you thought you needed to be, right? And as you are becoming accustomed to the landscape and the terrain and all this kind of thing, right, once you kind of feel your way into where you are, and maybe taking into account the things that are happening in the landscape, you know, like hearing explosions and shit going off over there. You're like, oh, actually, I'm kind of glad I didn't end up going that way. It's all part of the consciousness shift that you've been going through. You could quite simply call it a recalibration of your compass. Is what's been going on, right? So, although it's felt difficult, although it's felt like you've been wandering without guidance, I think the guidance has been it's been busy doing something else. It's been recalibrating your compass. And this is why you haven't felt particularly strong or particularly like you've been in charge and controlling all the things that you're doing. It's just like, oh, I'm kind of stuck in the middle of all of this. The recalibration of the compass is it's a very subtle thing. And it isn't necessarily something that you would notice at the point that it was happening. I do feel, though, that calibration is almost complete, because when we move into your current energy here, it feels to me like we've got somewhat of a pause happening, right? There was movement here, albeit it was slow, and possibly it was slightly tedious, and we've all felt a little bit like we were just, you know, going through quicksand trying to get somewhere. You know, the events of the world whipping up into a fury and clearly moving very, very fast, but we ourselves being like, why is it so slow? It's been so slow because the universe has been like, hang on, I'm recalibrating your compass. You don't want to charge off 100 miles in that direction because you need an upgraded consciousness to go where you're going. And that's what I'm trying to do back here in the background, right? So this Nine of Wands is a stopping, and it feels in the case of your reading here, Scorpio, that it's actually it's a stopping and taking stock, which is not how I often interpret the Nine of Wands. But because the nines for me represent how we as individuals in an authoritative and sovereign state manage whatever suit it represents, here it's like, it's your actions. What do you do? What has meaning? What do you want to do? What has more meaning for you now than it did before? What didn't? You know, this Two of Swords down here is quite interesting, because we've got, in both instances of these clarifying cards here, we've got some sort of obscured light, right? The consciousness is obscured. In the case of the Empress, the consciousness is somewhere else. We've got things growing in the dark here. Here, it's eclipsed by the moon, right? So the moon is the dominant feature here. Oh, that's interesting. Well, what's interesting is that this is moon in Sagittarius. So we actually have three cards where the dominant energy here is the moon rather than the sun. I mean, even in this one, what's been going on has been going on low level and below the radar. It's a slow, steady, consistent thing that's been it's been landscaping your insides, not your outsides. It takes a while to catch up. And I think here, certainly where you are right now, you're giving yourself permission to survey the landscape. That's what this dude's doing here. He's surveying the landscape and working out, in the case of the Two of Swords, what answers you would like but you do not currently have. But in the case of the Empress, an awareness of something beginning to grow inside of you. Now, like I said, there's so much fire across the main cards in this reading here, that there is a corresponding action, there is a corresponding external expression that's going to happen very, very soon. Because if the calibration is complete and we understand where, that we don't need to keep plodding now, we can actually look around, survey the landscape. The question of where we go from here, what we do from here, is not something that I feel that you have all of the answers to yet. They're there, but they're obscured. And the obscuration, I think, is because of this upgrading of the internal space that's going on, right? The upgrading of the subconscious to match the new environment, the new situation. And I think you're a lot more patient with yourself, possibly, than you've ever been before. I don't know why that would be the case, but there seems to be a little less emphasis on you being able to think 27 moves ahead. And you've become almost more, well, no, you've become more present with yourself. So being aware of what you're not aware of seems to be something that's percolating in the background. But also, at the same time, there is an understanding and an acceptance of that what is not yet obvious to you will be made obvious in time, because everything with the Empress gets some sort of birth point, right? And that it's okay for you not to know these things. Now, even just this position in and of itself, Scorpio, represents a massive shift for you, because all the things that we've talked about in the past in terms of things like hypervigilance and like I said, like plotting 57 moves ahead with all the variables that might go along with that, has always come from a place of self-protection, because your experiences, up to a certain point, reflected back to you the need to be in that state of hypervigilance. If you don't, you get ambushed by something, and that leads to pain. It leads to suffering. And humans are pain avoidant creatures. So to be able to be in this place where you know that there is more information, we see that in the Two of Swords, there's more information, but it's not here yet. And accept that you have what you need in the moment, you understand what you need in the moment, and everything else will come. It's like, Scorpio, who are you? Do you know what I mean? But we've seen this coming for quite a long time, and the pause is, okay, we've arrived at a place. We may be a little battered, we may be a little bit bruised, we may have a bandage around our head, we may be like, whew, that's been a lot. It's 2025, I think everybody feels like it's been a lot. But I'm still here. And I feel much more in control of myself than I ever have done before. I feel a little less at the whims and mercies, or the whims and fancies maybe, of circumstance and other people and all that sort of thing. And so the question is then, what do I choose to do next? You don't feel to me to be saddled down with a lot of the other things that felt so deeply embedded that they must be part of the Scorpio archetype. Well, behave. What was it? Oh, it's only the Eight of Swords in reverse. There, like that. This is a major breakthrough. This is the biggest of major breakthroughs, actually. A lot of people don't like the Eight of Swords, but I see this as an empowering card, and it's empowering only if you can see it that way, right? If you can shift your consciousness enough to see it this way. Because for me, the Eight of Swords is both the problem and the solution all in one, right? The problem is we feel stuck, we feel trapped, we feel restricted, we feel imperiled sometimes, right? We're like, oh, there's danger around everywhere. Is that not, a good description of everything that I was just talking about there in terms of Scorpio's hypervigilance and whatnot? But when you recognize that there is some aspect of here, some aspect of self here that is choosing to keep ourselves in that state, because even though it feels dangerous and even though there's a kind of paralysis about this here, The problem is caused by the way that we're thinking about it rather than the thing itself. The problem is never the problem. The problem is the way that we're thinking about it. So the reclamation of power comes from busting out of what feels like a very restrictive environment, so that we can think about things very, very differently. And as an expression of what I was just talking about here, with your ability to be able to go, oh, I don't have all of the answers, and that's okay. I mean, I hope you're all with me here, Scorpio, and you recognise what a big fucking deal that is. It's huge. It means that the mental processing that goes along with your consciousness shift has also upgraded itself. This is massive. And there's I think Scorpios can be very patient, right? You can be very, very patient. But there's a patience about the you that is emerging that I think maybe you haven't had before. You could be patient in terms of, I don't want to fall into tropes too much, but I always feel like the revenge is a dish best served cold is very much a Scorpio sentiment, right? It's the the revenge that you don't see coming because everybody else forgot about it and you didn't. I don't think there's a time that's too long for a Scorpio, a previous version of Scorpio, to sit with that as a thing. But there's always been a lot of self-flagellation with Scorpio. I don't think people realise quite how much responsibility Scorpio has always taken upon themselves. And part of this might have been because simply you just did not share that information, right? But we've talked about this in the past. And even down to things that you have done, things that you have said, ways that you have drawn a line under certain relationships and all that kind of thing. It's not because you're flighty. It's not because you're it's not any one of any of these reasons that could see Scorpio as a kind of skittish kind of energy. Like, you're a fixed sign. You don't do that. Well, what you did do was think 57 moves ahead and go, there are no outcomes here that don't lead to absolute disaster. And so in a lot of instances, things like, I care about this person enough that I'm going to draw an end to it now, rather than drag this down into something fucking awful, which is going to hurt me and it's going to hurt them, right? The thing is, because you thought so fucking far in ahead, this was so way off everybody else's radar that it seemed a little bit like, it could feel like cruelty sometimes. And I think there are a couple of signs in the zodiac that are, well, everybody gets wildly misrepresented in some ways, right? But in terms of being deeply misunderstood, I really do think Scorpio is up there. Deeply, deeply misunderstood. And the kind of pressure that these kind of decisions that you have felt compelled to make, because you could see so far ahead, kind of pressure that this has put on you, not just of the recognition of the situation, but then in the execution of doing the right thing. And the consequences of that, which still everybody's fucking oblivious to because nobody could see as far ahead as you could. It's been a crushing weight that Scorpios carried very, very quietly. And I very, very rarely hear a Scorpio saying, no, you don't understand. This is what's happened. There are pros and cons to being as deep a sign as you are. Right? The pros are, you get a feel from a really deep place. The cons are, you get to feel from a really deep place, right? So everything feels much more intense for you than it does for other people. That's your starting point. And maybe there are times that you could point to where, in retrospect, you can go, well, actually, yeah, I plumped for cruelty there because it was probably the best thing to do. But it was making sure that the end happened, the death, if you will, happened exactly as it needed to, and it didn't drag on for a long time where you could be seduced by circumstance to kind of carry this on for longer than you think is necessary, right? There's an ability that sits at the back of that. Nobody ever fucking talks about it, Scorpio. Nobody talks about it. Why does nobody talk about it? You don't talk about it. You're a Scorpio, right? Okay, I get that. Why does nobody else see it? I think it's because you're intense and because you're deep and because you speak to those parts of people. And people traditionally are not intense and not deep. So you've been talking to somebody on that level and they don't get it. They don't see what's sitting behind it. And then when you've drawn an end to things, when you've completed things, when you've gone, actually, this has gone far enough, I know where this goes, and it's going to all topple off a cliff, so let's draw an end to it now. What you get is extreme emotional reactivity. What you get is screaming rejection and all that sort of stuff, right? People screaming about being rejected and whatnot. What a fucking road to walk, Scorpio. It's my tummy agreeing. In terms of the decisions that you make and the moves that you take moving forwards, though, I feel like the crushing weight of this, albeit noble, but actually kind of heavy for you to carry, situation is kind of coming to an end. There's something that's been loosening and lightening for Scorpio for years now, and I feel like maybe, certainly for now, what we've got is a situation where that work is kind of completing. You know, I've been saying to everyone that 2025, if done right for a lot of people, is a new start. We get to live the rest of our lives closer to who we should have been before life interfered with all of the trauma and all the shit. Than what we've lived. But then at the same time, it sort of becomes a little bit circular, because you're like, well, how would you have discovered all of these things without having to work through all that stuff first, right? I do genuinely believe we don't deviate from our path at all. Even when it looks like we're kind of spinning in circles in the woods like that, we're still on our path. If you don't have to think 57 moves ahead, if you don't have to base your actions, your decisions, your choices, your words, your anything on stuff that you can see going towards inevitably some sort of very, very painful breakdown, it means that you can be much more present. You can be much more in the moment. You see that the problem was never really the problem. The problem was the way that you were thinking about it, right? Now, to say that this is loosening you up is is an understatement, but please don't think that you lose any of your fixed sign strength on account of that. I think it's been very difficult for you to see, but I think what we're looking at is a very new iteration of Scorpio, where that depth, that intensity, and even, dare I say it, that nobility gets some sort of more obvious expression, right? And we're not having to make decisions that nobody will ever understand. Like, you can actually be you, Scorpio, authentically you, and a lot of what is on the inside feels like it's coming on the outside, where people who are not as deep and not as intense as you might actually be able to see it for what it is. I mean, this feels like a massive fucking liberation for you, Scorpio. If anything, it's going to make the business of being you a little less overwhelming all the time. I have a friend, client, that I absolutely fucking adore the bones. I remember her saying once, just go and sit in the garden, just flump down in the garden because I'm just way too intense for myself. I mean, I feel like that is shifting. I really, really feel like that is shifting because there's an outlet. We look at all of this energy that's going out. It's external expression. Scorpio doesn't do that, right? As fixed water, you take into yourself and you hold it there, right? So holding on to everything that you've thought, felt, everything where you've tried to do the right thing and people haven't understood what you were doing and they have preferred to attribute malice or callousness or something like that to your character. And you've gone, okay, all right. It doesn't let a lot out, and there's a hell of a lot of a build-up of energy in there, Scorpio, which I think is getting directed outwards now, because in August we have the King of Wands. Now the King of Wands is Leo, and obviously August is Leo season. Part of August is, at least, anyway. But the King of Wands is about mature action. Right? There's nothing even slightly reactive about the King of Wands. That's, reactivity is the preserve of the Knight of Wands, which actually has an association with Scorpio, right? It's not as obvious as Sagittarius, but it does exist. It is there. The King of Wands represents the pinnacle of fire expression and fire of creativity and whatnot, because it's matured. And because it's matured, it's not reactive, it's proactive. Because he's wise and he's seen many things and he understands what he can do and he understands what is not his to do, and so on and so forth, right? There's a big element of timing and patience with the King of Wands. Right? The Knight of Wands is fast and his timing is probably exceptional, but because he's so reactive, he does not process the situation in front of him first before then deciding what to do. Right? Wisdom and experience gives you the ability to be able to do that, and you get to that point of wisdom and experience by being unwise and unexperienced for a long time, right? So the King of Wands is pointing to some sort of external expression of something. It's a changed type of behaviour, it's a changed way of being, it's a very different kind of experience than you've had before, because a lot of it is allowing what has been locked away inside out. Now we've got the Nine of Pentacles there, and we see that these are kind of locked away by these feathers, right? The Nine of Pentacles is about the management of your resources, and these are not just financial. We're talking about your time, your care, your effort, your attention, your energy, your focus. All of these things are, for me, pentacles, because you can invest them. There's an investment in self that we always understand with the Nine of Pentacles, but there's also then how that is disseminated outwards. King of Wands says there are going to be moves that you are going to make this month, and they're going to feel very different. They're coming from a very, very different place. And it could well be that the things that you're doing are very, very different to what you have done before. Because the Hanged Man says we're looking at everything through a new set of eyes now. The Hanged Man is about voluntary surrender, not resistance. And I think with everything that we talked about over here, where you don't have all of the answers, and that's okay, August is going to see you doing things that you maybe didn't expect to do, but having sat and thought it through, now this seems like the right thing to do, and it's very different to what you've done before. But there is a surrender to the unfolding of circumstance, which doesn't require any element of your control. Because there are a number of facts about Scorpio in August 2025 that didn't exist before, August 2025. And that is, you have everything that you need to do what you need to do. You have lots of resources at your disposal, and you can call upon any of them at any time. The King of Wands says, I can trust my judgment in the moment and know how to act. I don't need to think 57 steps ahead. There's an ability to be present here. That feels so new that you're almost sort of going through, you're almost trying to work out what the fuck is going on the fly here, and that's all right. Like, the Queen of Swords likes information. She likes to be working things out all the time. But I think she's here to show you that it's okay, and that's represented by this. Like, it's okay not to have all of the details. It's okay not to know all of the things, as we don't. We trust that they will be revealed in time. But this here is, there are opportunities for you to strike out of your comfort zone, for sure. There are opportunities to be had, for sure. But there's nothing even remotely... what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not reactive. It's not like... I'm thinking along the lines of the Knight of Wands, right? Reactive or thoughtless or reckless. It's not even remotely reckless. It's a surrender to the energies of the moment that say, I trust that whatever comes up, I'll know exactly what to do about it. Well, I do think that this is going to be accompanied by things that require you to do something about it. And maybe these things might involve you being a little bit more visible than Scorpio is traditionally comfortable in being. It might be you needing to lead by example. There's active expression, there is active doing here. It's Leo, so there's a sense of being in the middle of things. Maybe even directing things. But what really stands out here is the amount of confidence that you have, because you've stopped resisting and you've chosen to surrender, which is absolutely extraordinary. Queen of Swords is on the bottom of this deck as well, and it's like, there are ways of making sense of things, and then there are ways of making sense of things. And I think we've left behind an old way of making sense of things, which required us to have every single one of the facts in chronological order, so that we could stitch together some sort of web and construct a visual, visual aids for ourselves about how everything is connected and how one thing will lead to another and another and another. But then there's a way of processing information that says whatever's happened before now, it's not as important as what is happening right now. And any fears that I've had in the past about being seen or being a leader or a guide or a teacher or speaking from a place of experience, Scorpio, giving people the benefit of your experience. Because this month is all about experience for you, right? And some sort of expression of experience. You're showing people how to regulate their pentacles, how to manage their pentacles. And I feel like you're doing it by, you're teaching by example. I'm going to the extended now because I want to dig into this a little bit more. This is really interesting, but there's definitely movement, and it's very confident, and it feels so very different to anything that you've done before. But it also feels like it's absolutely right for you in this moment. If you'd like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. You can do that on Circle, or you can do that on Selfie. Links for both are down in the description box below. If that's not your bag, that's absolutely fine. Prepare for big moves this month, right? Because everything up until this point has been about preparing for the big moves. And what has not been clear to you in terms of your growth or your direction, right? The star that you're following, it's all been part of the process. Things start to come into, 4K for you this month. And it feels much crisper. The confusion isn't there, not in the same way. I love this. Right, know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.